problem is really one of off-road recreational vehicle riding, in that there is nowhere to do it. It's been a problem in this municipality for at least the last 20 years and probably for longer. The problem really was that there were lots of bikes being sold, parents were purchasing bikes for children, and the consequent difficulties weren't being coped with, certainly weren't being understood, and people really didn't know what to do. In Frankston, it's been an environmental problem. It's certainly been a problem in terms of nuisance and noise. It's been a problem in that it's been dangerous for young people riding in unsupervised areas and also on roads.
My son used to ride a motorbike and was warned several times when he was caught by police and council officers because of the rules that are in force, whereby you're not allowed to use off-road bikes in built-up areas. When my son bought this bike, we were completely unaware of any rules or bylaws that existed, and it was not until after a couple of meetings at the PCIP that I learned of these rules. I do feel that a lot of motorbike dealers should advise people of this when they are buying bikes.
Some 4.5 years ago, they commenced to build houses here, and we found that we had a monstrous problem with motorbikes. Violence was becoming a larger problem every week. It got to the stage where perhaps 40 to 50 motorbikes were out here, and the residents were attacking them with shovels.
As a member of the traffic branch in Frankston and enforcing the traffic law, when we intercepted the young riders riding in the area illegally, we were confronted with the problem. The question was asked, where can we ride these motorbikes? But we had no answer to this.
Well, the main thing us kids want is to ride home. The thing is, why won't they let us? It's not being used for anything. Fair enough, they make us pay to come off the weekend or something, we don't mind. We don't mind keeping away from the houses, but they still, even if we ride right up the back, the poppers still can't annoy us.
Yeah, what's the main hassle though? Is it the residents or...?
Yeah, it's mainly the residents.
Yeah. Through the police or just police on their own? Or?
No, we've even had residents chase us with axes and throw stuff at us.
Yeah. It's been a big problem up here from time to time, hasn't it? The track's been here for a long time. I mean, it's been here for several years. What's the main problem you see facing kids riding bikes around Frankston at the moment?
I don't see why they can't give us the land. They're always making us best riding on the roads. Well, they give us some of this, we won't ride on the roads. Give us somewhere to ride.
What about if you had a park set up that you could use, properly set up with the track?
I think a lot of kids would use it.
Do you reckon the kids would use it?
Yeah.
Rob, what do you reckon?
I reckon we use pipes. Better than getting them off the railway tracks and that. Because that's where people ride. There's nowhere else to ride, so there's got to be somewhere to ride.
Frankston Council had tried the option of simply allocating vacant land for trail bike riding.
Council provided initially one area of land, and about 5 years later a second area, on which young people could ride bikes if they had a permit, which was obtainable through the council, and if their vehicle was registered either under the Recreational Vehicles Act or registered to be ridden on the road. Now that didn't really solve the problem because only a small minority of people using the designated areas had registered bikes or rode with a council permit, and those areas were uncontrolled and unmanaged.
This area was badly devastated in the early 70s by bike riding, both mini bike and trail bike riding, causing irreparable damage to the ground cover of the reserve. It's 8 years now since those ruts that you see on camera on the steep slopes were created.
Council purchased an area of land in Frankston on the top of Wells Road, which was far enough away from residential areas to overcome the problem of noise, but which was still accessible, and designated that area to be used at some time in the future for motorcycle riding purposes. At that stage the council thought, and that was 2 years ago, thought that it could be best managed by the Frankston and District Motorcycle Club. There were a number of people in community who felt that if that land was managed that way, that wouldn't come to terms with the problem of off-road recreational vehicle riding, but would only cater for a small minority of young people and adults who were interested in competitive racing.
About 4 years ago, the Frankston Motorcycle Club was approached by council for ideas on how we could solve the motorcycling problem in Frankston. A bit of land was made available down at Seaford and negotiations took place, conversations, discussions. Nothing really ever came out of it much. Frankston Motorcycle Club did give a few ideas to council, but there were a few problems which were evident, and one was going to be the necessity for a person to ride a motorcycle down there being a member of the Frankston District Motorcycle Club, and that was a bit of a problem to the council.
In early 1981, the problem of illegal off-road riding came to a head.
When the Police Community Involvement Group originally arrived at Frankston, one of our first tasks was to find out what problems the community and the police had and what possible solutions there were to them. It was made very clear to us that a major problem in the area of police and community was that of off-road motorcycles. They were causing problems that initiated 15 to 20 complaints each Saturday and Sunday, and whilst the community saw it as a police problem, the police saw it as a community problem. We saw it as a problem that we should both get involved in, and so we came to the conclusion that we should call a public meeting of all people interested in motorcycles and off-road motorcycles and try and come up with a solution to the problem. What we did was invite everyone involved, policemen, complaining residents, anyone who'd been involved in motorcycles in the past, the Motorcycle Riders Association.
As chairman of the public meeting, I was agreeably surprised with the number of groups represented. And it was very obvious early in the meeting that it was necessary to bring the views of all these groups together in an endeavour to attack the problem. This we did, and formed a standing committee representing these people to get on with it.
The steering committee had to sort out issues such as management, funding, site preparation, staffing, facilities and operating procedures. The Brotherhood of St Lawrence Neighbourhood Employment Development Program, then operating in Frankston, became involved at this point.
Our program was concerned with the generation of employment to meet community needs. The off-road motorcycle park was an obvious community need which also faced the problem of management. It seemed to us that the management issue could be solved through the generation of employment, and ultimately through the provision of employment, the park could become self-sufficient. In terms of setting up the park, one of the problems we faced was how it would be managed and what sort of legal identity it would have. After discussing a number of alternatives, we eventually decided to set up a cooperative. We decided to set up a cooperative because it was simple to do, it was relatively cheap, and it also enabled a broad cross-section of the local community to be involved. Of course, it also gave us a legal identity and enabled us to employ staff and arrange insurance and also deal with the legal implications of the Recreational Vehicles Act.
When considering the problems of running a motorcycle park, I discovered there were four main problems to be dealt with. The first was to help negotiate the terms of holding the land, whether it be with a municipality or by private ownership. It is essential to make sure that the people who are negotiating the lease on behalf of the owner of the land really understands the concept of a motorcycle park, which I personally felt difficult when first mentioned to me. The second matter is to really decide, if one has reached successful negotiations with the owner of the park, that you should decide which entity the club or the park should take. It could be a company limited by guarantee, it could be a simple unincorporated body, or some other factor, but it is important to get those relationships quite right at the beginning. The third matter was to help the club establish rules for the conduct of the park, because by its very nature it is very hazardous, and by the fact that it is hazardous, it is quite likely that litigation sometime will arise out of an accident. And to do your homework right in the first place will mean safety and the viability of the park in the future. There also should be help given to establishing notices and conditions of entry. This is really a legal matter and requires careful consideration, and should be done to ensure that liability is minimised. The fourth matter that I would suggest you look is the Recreation Motor Vehicles Act, which is an act of the state of Victoria. It is necessary to look at this act to come to terms with the problems set out in the previous three matters I have mentioned. I suggest very strongly that legal advice be obtained in order to overcome the problems set out by that act.
Funding was a major hurdle. A submission was prepared to Frankston Council.
Well, Council was enthusiastic about the proposal for two reasons. Firstly, it solved the off-road motorcycle problem that we had in Frankston, and secondly, it effectively brought together a broad range of community interests, and it was a venture that was going to pay for itself, and it was a worthwhile community project.
At the time, there was also funding available for cooperatives, and we were able to obtain a seeding grant to get the motorcycle park going, and that was important in terms of initially being able to purchase capital equipment, set up the facilities and employ staff in order to attract young people to come and ride at the park. When the steering committee for the motorcycle park was set up in May 1981, I don't think any of us envisaged what a long and difficult process it was going to be to establish the Frankston Motorcycle Park. There were many diverse community groups involved in trying to get the motorcycle park going. Everyone had different and varied views of how it could be set up. And of course, at the same time, we had the ongoing problem of illegal off-road riding within the municipality. Certainly the approach we'd taken wasn't the simplest one in terms of getting a park established quickly, but I think we all felt that in the long run it was going to be worthwhile, because it would be the most effective way to manage a motorcycle park facility properly. I think what kept us going was the fact that we made progress and we had tangible results to show. For example, we got the finance from the Frankston City Council, and they also allocated the land. Renovations then started on the building, which meant that we could see that a facility was being developed. We also obtained funding from the Cooperative Development Program to establish the cooperative and employ staff. We were incorporated as a legal body, and all these sorts of things meant that we felt that we were getting somewhere. But it's been a long process, I can assure you.
Having obtained funding, financial management became a high priority. The services of an accountant were invaluable.
The role of the accountant in the exercise is to take the information that has been provided by the committee, take a critical look at it, and ensure that it has commercial reality. This involved us in quite a bit of work together, looking at the information and firming up our proposals by going back and getting additional facts. This then led on to the formation of an accounting structure which could be operated by the employees and readily understood by the members of the board. This included the use of budgets which projected the income and expense and enabled the board to have a benchmark against which to aim.
After arranging personal accident and public liability insurance and employing a manager, site preparations began in earnest. A trail bike track should be situated as far as possible from residential areas. To ensure access by young riders, the Frankston track decided to start a pickup service. Away from the track, other preparations were going on. Sponsorship generates income for the park.
Jack Cleary from Frankston Motorcycle Park. We talked about the sponsorship on the phone the other day.
Promotion helps to ensure its success. Site preparation also involved provision of amenities for users. The workshop repairs bikes and sells spare parts. It is also set up to teach young people how to maintain their bikes. The amenities provided are part of the total concept of the park. By their provision, a community need is being met and income is being generated, which enables the employment of staff. This facilitates more efficient park management and increases its ability to meet the need it was set up for. In October 1982, the Frankston Trailbike Park was open.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. It is indeed my pleasant duty and privilege to welcome you all here, and also our special guests and visitors.
To comply with the Victorian Recreational Vehicles Act, the park is operated by a club. Riders pay a nominal yearly subscription and a daily entrance fee.
I think it's good because it's got good track and stuff like that.
Oh, because you got nowhere else to ride.
And it's great because we don't have any hassles from the cops. Great.